Welcome back to Three Old Tech Dudes. I'm Nathan, and today we're going to look at a interesting magazine from 1938, November of 1938, actually. And this one's kind of old. I have not opened this yet, so we'll take a look at it. I can tell you that on the front of it, they are talking about radio amateurs help colonize U.S. islands in the Pacific. On the back, there's actually an advertisement for an RCA tube, which is kind of interesting. Power tube, actually, which is pretty sweet. So yeah, so let's open this thing up. Said I have not opened this yet at all. So okay, so today we're looking at the November 1938 issue of Radio magazine, and it's a beautiful cover. To me it's surprising that any of this is in color considering the time, but yeah, and it was 30 cents. This is actually in amazing condition too. Really, it's in wonderful condition. I mean, you can tell it's not destroyed and everything else. It's quite beautiful, actually. It's not been repaired or anything, which is actually it's going to make a nice addition to my personal catalog, that's for sure. So anyway, let's take a look at this. And of course, on the cover here, we have someone in what looks like a catamaran kayak type thing on some desert islands or something like that. South Pacific Islands. It's a beautiful picture, and yeah, you can tell, wow, this really has not been used much at all because that's still tight. So I just want to point out something funny with this. So they're showing like different electronic pieces you can buy here, and these look like transformers for the most part. The guy still holding a cigarette. You just never see that in modern ads at all. iMac tubes. They still make tubes, I believe. Interesting. I like just the whole why not fire a brick for an ant? That's interesting. Yeah, I just still how tight this thing is. And this here, the glue is actually still holding this pretty well, so I won't do it too much. So we'll do it this way a little bit so you can see it. But it's got advertising instructions and inquiries can be made. Wow. So that's rather fascinating. They have editors and business staff all over the United States. That's pretty wild. And there's call signs too. And honestly, I figured they would be a bit different of call signs. These are actually just like W6QD, W1AY. I mean, that's actually fascinating that I would assume back then it would be slightly different call signs, like HAM was a call sign. That's where ham radio comes from. But yeah, that's fun. So announcing another publication by the editors of radio, the new radio handbook. That's fascinating. I might have to see how I find that one. I think I have seen that one floating around. I don't think it's the same thing as like the WNAW or W1, the ARRL amateur radio handbooks, but this is rather fun. So here's our table of contents. So that's really funny. Fundamental theory, vacuum tubes, decimals and logarithms, antennas. That's fascinating. I mean, you don't see this using like really like a whole page laid out like this anymore. It's just really just rather different. That's pretty. Now, a lot of times I like looking at in some of these old ones, and old QSTs and some old amateur radio handbooks is just the ads in here, and that's rather some of just the interesting technology changes, especially from 1938. There were no transistors back then, so there's no computers either, which is pretty cool, or at least no all electronic computers. There was some mechanical stuff being played around with, but yeah, it's a 600 watt transmitter. Oh my. Well, that's fun. Some more different tube production. Taylor tubes. See, don't think I've seen any of those. So here's your articles. 3-element rotary. It's interesting. Pounding brass for articles. I wonder what that's supposed to be. I guess that's maybe recycling? I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, won't we? 5 to 160 meter phone. An improved 10 meter receiver. Wow. Kites and antenna supports. That's 5 meters. 5 meter DX. UHF beams. That's actually really, the UHF back in this day was really, really expensive and hard to make because just the way the systems, they didn't have easy access to stuff like we do now. Also, the thing, of course, no URLs because it's decades and decades and decades before the internet, of course, but there's also no phone number that I'm seeing on this. I would have figured they'd have something like that on there, but yeah, they just have a place to write them. Ross A. Hull. I guess I've never heard of him before. That's probably sad because I'm sure he was a rather interesting guy. The 3-element rotary. Oh, let's see what it is. It looks like a clothesline antenna, but you can actually turn that. I wonder how well that worked. If you ever ran something like that, let us know how well that worked. Or even if it did. Here's describing how to build the antennas. Maybe we're working on an upcoming video for antenna building. Maybe we should build something like that. And if you think we should, let us know below. There's Yagi. Maybe that's what this is working with in the concept. I'll have to look. Let's see, 4924. Well, yeah, it kind of looks like a Yagi design. Interesting. That is Yagi design. Interesting. Okay, so they're using, that's what they called this before then? No, really? A 3-element rotary is actually a Yagi. Or Yagi, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Wow. I don't think I've ever heard that called that before. Fun. The same idea on a tower. Bigger one. These are all homemade too. That's just fascinating. There's a good HF beam. So keep in mind, this thing came out a few years before the United States entered World War II. It was already kind of sort of happening by now in Europe and certainly in Japan, but it wasn't, we weren't in the middle of that yet. There's shipwreck. That's interesting. Wreck of the Armouth on Jarvis Island. Arameth? Interesting. Huh. Oh, there we go. Look at the size of that thing. 560 meter phone. This gigantic rack of equipment to make that work. Oh, hey, they gave you schematics. That's nice. Push-pull HK54 finals. Wow, that is just a rack of stuff. The full racks of stuff, just shelf after shelf of things. I mean, you think today you can, easily pick up a handheld radio that is so much more advanced. Doesn't put as much power, but so much more advanced than that. I wonder if anyone's ever seen one of these actually working or has one, let us know down in the comments. That's fascinating. We would like to hear that and just stories of that. I'm trying to be careful with the fold in this too. This 10 meter radio requires a rack of equipment. Wow. So over in one of my racks on the other side of the room here, I actually have a Collins R390, which is a full rack size piece of equipment, but it was just a receiver. But yeah, it's way newer than this even, which is funny. Band in meters. Here we go. 60, 80, 40, 20, 10, 5. So I'm kind of wondering in 1938 how many people really had actual like standard 19-inch rack mount equipment. We have a lot of that stuff today for like, different audio gear and some other things like that. And certainly, network switches and servers and things like that use that. But that's interesting. And this is pretty well built stuff, looks like. Interesting. More schematics on how it works. Emergency primary power. That's interesting. Yeah, so today we think of like emergency backup power and everything like that for, servers or for your house or whatever like that. And you can buy the equipment. But back then they really had to kind of sort of piece it together on their own. Which is interesting. Dynamotors, fan belt generators, hand generators, batteries, gas engines, water wheels. That's actually interesting. They were thinking a 500 watt generator from water wheels. What was the other page? It had something else there too. A wind driven and vibrator. Okay, so vibrator power supply. It was an early DC to AC converter. So those were popular back in, I know, the 60s with like the Collins Mobile, or not Collins, the Drake TR4 and stuff like that you could take mobile if you had the vibrator power supply, and it would convert 12 volts to 120. Because now we use electronics to do that, but back then they used kind of a relay set to oscillation, and then the output of it sent through a transformer. So it worked. It was a little noisy and very crude, but it did actually work. Kites and antenna supports. This is amazing how much of this is here. Here's how to build this. I mean, a lot of it now is, here's a little bit of build, but here's mainly how how you talk to someone, or because not that many amateur radio operators make their stuff anymore, which is a little unfortunate, but that's the line, the days we live in at this point. Interesting. 5 meter DX. I would imagine 5 is basically the same thing as 6. If you ever ran 5 meters, it'd be an interesting story to read. And what the frequency actually is. I'll have to find that. I could do the conversion, I guess, but there it is, 56. Yeah, so it's just above the 6 meter band now. That's interesting. I wonder when that changed. Probably, I would guess, reintroducing it after World War II. So I didn't get my license till 91. I'd been playing around with radio prior to that, but that's when I got mine. So it was, the bands as we have them for the most part now, except for a few of the new ones. And we had the full 220 band back then too, but yeah. The flex till exciter. Huh. Multiple crystal holders. So you switch between crystals? Yeah, ish. It looks like maybe. Weird. They're different crystal holders, not little squares. It look like TO3 packs almost. UHF beam oscillator. It's amazing how they made any of this stuff work. I mean, it's literally a wood box. How do you protect from elements? Or is this just drawn? I guess it's just drawn in there, but still, wow. 4 wire lines? That's interesting. I've never even seen anything like that before. A 2 wire, sure. 4 wire. That's a new one. There's your balance. Huh. Those are neat. 1851 RF tubes. I'll have to actually look that one up. I have no idea what that tube does. I guess I can say the ridiculous thing is it does tube things, but I know that's kind of ridiculous though. That's really neat. Just the stuff that's in here. I think I put the radio in the fireplace. Oh, that's funny. If you did that to keep it cool, let the up drive pull the air up through it. Oh my. I'm guessing by this is CW and phone. Wow, it's mostly CW. I'm guessing. Well, they did actually mark off a bunch of this. Apparently, whoever owned this book originally, which I don't believe it stated. No, it did not. I actually checked off. Apparently, who they worked. That's fun. But this looks like this is a maybe a list of winners of one of the contests, I would guess. DX Overseas News. The 1939 Marathon. What is it? Details in December radio. Oh, I might have to find the December copy now. I'm assuming Brass Pounder is actually referring to CW running, Morse code running. I just don't think I've ever heard it called brass pounding. That's neat. Oh, the AWRL logo. That's fun. K4KD in Centaurus. Pretty cool. That's fun. That's radio setup. That's it's kind of neat what they do. It looks like he's on a typewriter. Maybe he's actually I don't know if he's listening or he's running teletype maybe, but yeah. LA2B Norway. One transmitter has an HF 100. It's finally running 150 watts on 7, 14, and 28 meg. Second transmitter ends up with a 210 with 25 watts. I don't know. Must be the output tube. With a 210, 20 watts output for 3.5 and 7. His antenna is a 20 meter zip. 50 feet high, especially directed for the USA. That's neat. So this is a guy in Norway. It's a radio station in Norway set up. It's pretty. There's an Anchorage, Alaska station. So we have a friend of ours in the local club here is actually, I don't think he's actually from, he lived in Alaska for a long time anyway. And I'll have to see if he had ever heard of this guy. Wake Island. That's fun. Another advertise. Make sure you get the December radio, and you can tell what the 1939 marathon is. I'm guessing the run up to World War II. Of course, they didn't know that at the time. It's hard to believe if you really think about it. I mean, seriously, this is pre-World War II, and that's just, to me, that's just fascinating to see this stuff, and it's still around, and it's still in really good condition. I mean, this paper is not really yellowed at all. It's 7460 Beverly Boulevard, Los Angeles, California. Wow. I wonder what that place even is. It's probably like a parking lot now. Oh my. There's another radio station that looks oh, that's W1AW. Interior view of the Memorial Station, W1AW, Newington, Connecticut. That's probably in their museum now. Oh, well, you can get a year's copy. I have to look for that. So this is a year's copy of this magazine for $1. Oh my word, that's just funny. 56 megacycles, so that's 6 meters or 5 meters, rather. So I wonder why they switched. Maybe it's when they switched more for television broadcast. I think takes up just above that. So this is how to service radios. Radio equipment. That's fun. There's some more of the stations that were heard. Radio antenna handbook. That's fun. The AWRL puts out something like that. I kind of wonder if these people absorbed the AWRL at some point, or maybe these went out of business and the AWRL just survived. If you know what happened to this, if it just became the AWRL or what, let us know down in the comments. There's some variable capacitors. Yarn of the month. I might read that one for later. That looks like a fun read. More part sales. What's new in radio? The RCA 813 high power beam tetrode. Could do 260 watts with the power of a half watt in. A gain of 500. Wow. Yet the tube is operating at efficiency over 72%. That's actually pretty decent. It's interesting. I never heard anyone refer to the percentage of the efficiency of a tube back then. It's kind of interesting to see that they were worried about that at some point. Kind of wonder what something like that costs. I think I have an 813 in some of my stuff somewhere. I'll have to look. Is it crystal, a switchable crystal, 40 meter variable crystal unit? So a lot of people were on radios back then, and even later, were what a friend of mine lovingly referred to as rock bound. But yeah, they were held down by crystals, so you could vary the crystal frequency a little bit, but not a lot. The Mallory Magnesium Copper Sulfide Rectifiers. Wow. And they're in Indianapolis. We're in Indiana here, so that's kind of fun. I did have a friend of mine who used to work for them a long time ago. He didn't make these. He made, I think, coils or capacitors. I think it's capacitors, actually. But in fact, I saw him a couple weeks ago. Not even, a week and a half ago, actually, it was. Well, those old guys that did that stuff they're vanishing quickly, unfortunately. New multi-unit microphone. A big microphone. Is this a crystal device? Yes, crystal microphone. You basically don't use those anymore. You still could. They just don't sound as good as modern mics. Those are resistors. A variable resistor and a fixed one. I've got a couple of these. Communication to 13 tube communication receiver. That's a weird way to write that. 34K to 550K. So 34,000 to 550K. So it's very low band. Oh, might. I think they still exist. Or they did not that long ago, I think. I'll have to look them up. I still find it funny that no one has a phone number on any of this. I guess telephoning people back then was rather expensive and not normal. I guess. I don't know. A voltmeter. Harvey Radio Company of New York. New York. 103rd West 43rd Street. I think that was what they used to call Radio Row, in that address-ish. Maybe not. If you're in New York City and you know where that's at, or where that was, let us know what's there now. My guess is probably nothing, but you never know. Allied Radio Company went out. I don't know when it was, but they went out some time ago. J3FJ. It's a Kusutaka Yuswa. I don't know. Kusutaka Yuasa. Yeah, I will mispronounce that so badly. We'll just say that. That's interesting. But he's operating on 5 meters. That's interesting. Another microphone. Look at the size of that thing. It's just the size of the stuff at the time. Just it's actually $38, $37.50 microphone. Wow. I mean, back in 1938, that had to be some real cash. Transmitter of the month. That's interesting. It's amazing how many things are made in New York City or made in Los Angeles. That's so many of these. There's Niagara Falls. Rotary beam. Tuning condensers. Looks like just little blurbs. Another little radio design that someone's done. Radio amateur call book. That's interesting. I wonder how thick that one was. It'd be interesting if someone had one of those just to see how many hams there really were. That was out of Chicago. I'm still kind of shocked that I have yet to see a phone number. I mean, I probably missed one, but there's nothing in here that has phone numbers. I mean, that's, always just wrote to them. I guess you cut this out and write to them or something. I don't know. Interesting. British postal orders accepted. Wow. Cleaning and support pipe. Looks like it was kind of like, here's how to build your station. Buyer's guide. And yet, no phone number. I guess no one called each other back then. I know phones existed. They may just not have really been that effective back then yet. New Gamatron savings. $3.50 for that thing. That's probably like a week's wages for a tube. Or maybe more. I don't know. Or advertising index. I wonder if how many of these still exist. I don't know. Mallory, I think, was absorbed by something. I think they still exist, but in name only. Kind of like RCA, unfortunately. I know RCA is probably in here too, but yeah, RCA Manufacturing. They're just name only at this point. Huh. That's fun. I don't know. Have you ever heard of any of these companies? Which ones, especially if there's any of them still in existence. That'd be neat to see them. And then there's that beautiful picture on the back. And they actually did have some color in this. I mean, it's not much inside, but, the cover, front and back, were pretty well, had some color in them. There was a little bit here and there, but that was the November 1938 copy of Radio Magazine. Okay, everyone, if you enjoyed looking at the radio magazine from 1938 and you thought maybe we should do more of these kind of things, hey, let us know down in the comments. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. You check us out on Facebook, and I believe we're on all the social medias. Just look down in the description. We should have that information down there. And if you want to send us information, or if you want to send us, stuff like this or something to that effect, we have a P.O. box. I'll make sure that's down there in the description field as well. And you all have a Merry Christmas, or hope you had a Merry Christmas. I'm shooting this on Christmas. And have a Happy New Year, and we will catch you in the next video.